Okay, cool. I'm going to give everybody some books and then introduce and we'll get going, okay?
Okay, what are we going to do the screen? Because it's a bit strange to switch to the screen. Where do you see the room with people?
Yeah. They may say, like, look at this image. They may at some point tell you to look at an image on a page, and then you'll just flip to it. They may at some point ask us to, like, look at an image in the book. So that's, and they'll say the page is Oh. I'm not sure if I can stand here. I think I should go here. Mark, is it better if I'm here?
Yeah.
Mark, oh, sorry.
Daar is goed.
Yeah. Am I there? We'll see them. Maybe we can put them already and just know that they're there.
Als ik ze daar opzet, gaan ze naar de stream. Dus.
Sorry?
Als ik ze daar opzet, gaan ze naar de stream.
Oh, then they have to see me in the stream?
They see what the camera sees.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, can we see them on the screen?
They see what's on that screen. So if I put them on there, then they're on the stream
then
also.
we see them. Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Okay, so we're going to get started. We had some PowerPoint fun, but now we're going old school with the books. So now you see me on the screen, but you'll see Alessandra and Nikolay in a second. Okay, I was also going to have my colleague Jean here and to help me. We also worked together to put this together, also with my colleague Frederic. Thank you. And thank you to Dmitry and Olga. We're very happy to have you here. And Alessandra and Nikolay, who can hear me. And we'll see them. Okay, we see them. Okay. So yeah, we're now in this installation called the Court for Intergenerational Climate Crimes. It's a project by Radhard de Souza and Jonas Stahl. And part of this project is having groups here to activate it collectively. So we're very happy to have Chto Delat, some members of Chto Delat here, to help us activate the space in a very interesting way. And we're super excited to gather also in the context of the launch of this book to navigate, or when the roots start moving, to navigate backwards, resonating with Zapatismo. And I think it's a very timely event now that we actually have a Zapatista delegation in Europe. So I think it's a really key time to be thinking through this. And I'm going to pass it over to Alessandra and Nikolay, who were the co-editors of the book, and Nikolay also did the graphic design for the book. And I think they'll talk us through the contributions and the graphic design and some of the images. Okay, so let's go.
Hello everyone, how are you? Thank you so much for having us with you. Can you hear me well? Okay, I don't see anyone in the room. I just see myself, but sorry not to be with you.
Они нас могут
Тут
видеть,
везде одинаково.
но они нас не видят.
Так они нас не видят, потому что...
Ага.
You hear me?
Yeah, and me.
But you can't see us.
Okay, now I see some people in the audience flipping through our book, That's encouraging.
И говорю, там они когда сидят,
Где видно?
Make a
Да.
sign.
пойдем.
А где? Кого она видит? Where is the camera?
Camera is here. Can you? Hey,
Olga,
yeah.
Ah, you can. We can move.
we start with the mic, but we see Olga. Tsaplya, hello, hello. Can you hear us? We are not sure if you hear us.
Say yes, we hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Почему здесь должен стоять?
Okay, we hear you through the mic. Okay, good. So,
Можем пойдем туда.
the technical interruptions we are using a new platform we are not very accustomed to. In any case, it's a great pleasure to be sharing the work we did with Chto Delat in Lyon University. I'm one of the founder of the Lyon University and curator also with Nikolay, whom I share also with Chto Delat, part of the collective. And maybe I should spend a few words about Lyon University. It's a sort of alternative school, a platform for learning that since 2014 we are animating with a group of artists, but also farmers and activists, people in the migration experience here in the south of Italy. And this initiative happened a little bit in parallel with Chto Delat School for the Arts. And when I met Nikolay and Nikolay started visit us in the south of Italy, we saw a lot of assonance between our two, call it alternative school for lack of the word. And in 2019, we invited the Chto Delat to lead one of the sessions here in Zapatismo. We collaborate closely with a group of activists, land protectors, farmers, field savers in a tiny village in the south of the peninsula of Salento. And this is where we invited Chto Delat to run a session with a group of migrant activists of farmers in 2019. And they proposed to use the media of the film, the tool of a learning film, to host this space of learning, which for us is also a place of living together. In Freedom University, we try not to separate life, studying, making art, producing, and we kind of have this pedagogy of the cohabitation, pedagogy of encounter. So when we work and live together as a group, as a learning community for 2-3 weeks in this tiny village in the south, and I think later on the plan was that we will show some fragment of this film, which is called People of Flower, Salt and Water. At the end of which we felt we had a lot of questions still open for us. You maybe can imagine how it is to live and create together within a group that is very different, that comes from different backgrounds, that don't share the same knowledge system. We were a group of European, Russians, friends that came from Ghana, from Kurdistan, from Mali, from Nigeria. So we had to learn to live together and to share knowledge, and there was a constant translation, not only linguistic, but also, I may say, epistemological constant translation of different knowledge systems. And somehow, as it is in the practice of Chto Delat, we used Zapatismo and the fables of Subcomandante Marco as a way to start interrogate our own struggles from different positions, from different set of privileges. We use the demands of Zapatismo, the method of Zapatismo, the fables of Subcomandante Marcos as icebreakers to discuss about our own struggles and our own conditions. So at the end of this process, which led to this beautiful film, which was really emerging from us being together, there was not a script, there was not an idea before we started. The story really emerged as we share space together. At the end of this process, there were a lot of open questions, and somehow the idea of the book came as a segue of this film, as a need we had from Free Home University and Chto Delat to discuss our methodologies, to discuss our pedagogies, to open a dialogue around what we identified as a question of belonging and a question of displacement. Somehow we understood through working on this film and in this experience of shared life, we understood in different ways we were all experiencing a certain type of belonging, being rooted somewhere or being looking for something that would root our experience, and at the same time a constant feeling of displacement in different ways. Of course, subjects that are experiencing the migration are very practical in this geographical, linguistic displacement, territorial displacement. For many of us in the West, we feel displaced from, I may say, from living in racist, patriarchal capitalism. We feel disconnected. We feel constantly a sense of disconnect from nature, from each other, from our own being. So this need of discussing this notion of, on one side, aspiring to belonging, a sense of connectedness, a sense of rootedness, and on another side, this constant displacement or living in the enclosure that our system produce and we reproduce within even our artistic or intellectual practice or in every aspect of everyday life. So the book came with this need and wanted to be a conversation around this kind of, let's say, coordinates. When we started to commission different tests, and in this book, the chapter around Zapatismo and what Zapatismo produced in us was very central. Because in a way, what we understood was that during the film, something that immediately connected us and something through which we were able to speak with each other was Zapatismo. Through their demand, people from Ghana and people from Russia could find somehow a common language. And this for us, for many of us, Zapatismo has been somehow this kind of belonging. It has been a sort of light in the dark. Also for our political imaginary, it's been always a lighthouse, a sort of homecoming, a sort of reference that has helped us also in urban Western context, imagine or help us prefigurate transformation in our society, change, real democracy, justice. That's why Zapatismo was, as I said, one chapter in the book we were imagining when we heard that the Zapatista delegation was announcing their travel to Europe. And this really create a strong emotion. We really were moved by this incredibly symbolic gesture of reversing the trajectory of colonialism exactly 500 years after the invasion of the Spanish Empire into Mexico and then Latin America. They were taking this boat that they called La Montaña, the mountain, and they were reversing and coming to us in what they announced as a sort of invasion of Europe, but as they propose as a trip to life, a journey to learn from each other's struggles and to commit to a mutual protocol to defend life in different territories, in different geographies. So we felt moved to expand this question of how we resonate through and with Zapatismo. And that's why the original book became a series of 3 books. And this first movement appeared as navigating backward and resonating with Zapatismo. It's very important to say right away that, thank you, Nikolay, Zapatismo for us, it's exactly, the relation is one of resonance, is one of echoing, is a dialogue with and a learning with Zapatismo and through Zapatismo. Is not an attempt to narrate the Zapatista movement and their struggle, of course, is not an attempt, is an attempt to travel with Zapatismo, but of course not to emulate what happened in Chiapas and these almost 30 years of revolution that they keep maintaining, and this path of autonomy that they built in almost 30 years. It's for us mostly a way to reflect on our own political imaginary, on our own practices, on our own pedagogies, through this echoing, through what has inspired us in Italy, as well as in Russia, as well as in Greece, because in the book we have also contributions from Greece and from other part of Mexico and from Chile. So how somehow those in the social movements, those who are engaged in social transformation have been inspired by Zapatismo. And of course, because Chto Delat as a group has started in 2016 this slow orientation in Zapatismo, an artistic investigation in Zapatismo, we take somehow their practice as a case study, again, as another way to be in resonance through certain pedagogical and artistic practice that have centered exactly and visited the community. We visit the Caracoles together and have elaborated their own Zapatistic, as Olga says in her beautiful text, method. So for this,
I would pass from this on to Dimitri Velensky, who contributed to the book with his beautiful text that is called Unlearning in Order to Learn, with a little help from Zapatistas, in which he declares and revokes a little bit of the history of political, and not only political, counter-interventions between Mexico and Russia, how it did develop ever since both Mexican and October Revolution in 2017, and how it really reflects back to our own perception of the Zapatista movement. So please, Dima, can you take the floor?
I'm cold.
Yeah.
No? Like, I have it's really interesting. I don't see. Can you hear me, guys?
you should try not to move too much, otherwise we hear a lot of noise from your mic.
So I should speak low, right?
Yes, right now we hear you very well.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Nikolay, actually, for that kind of introduction. I was about, I thought I will be speaking at the end. But anyway, it makes sense, actually, to talk about this event, and maybe actually we haven't mentioned the context, because thanks to Framed, who actually co-produced our last film in Athens, it happened, here. And actually, this was third film which reflect different situations. So first one was actually Russian one, then came what Alessandra explained about Italian one, and then luckily we managed in very complex COVID situation. And actually this event, I still can't believe my eyes that we are here without mask and everyone is okay, It's quite serious shock by traveling today, and actually, but maybe makes sense to say a few words about the beginning. So actually right now when we experience a certain, I don't want to say hype, but at the same time certain kind of big kind of exaltation about Zapatista visit to Europe. Actually, I should say when we started in 2016, we were invited to do exhibition in MUAC. It's a big museum in Mexico City. And I don't want to hide this name, by Guatemoc Medina, also quite serious curator, director of museum. And he actually invited us with a very open invitation to make kind of retrospective. We have quite big number of works already. But at the same time, it was possibility of production a new piece. And Guatemoc actually have in mind that we do something in between Russia and Mexico. And actually, historically, especially after revolution, it was very intense, very rich cultural exchange. So Russians came to Mexico, Mayakovsky, Eisenstein, Trotsky, of course, and other way around. Diego Rivera came to Moscow, and Arosca, and actually it was incredible cultural influences. But by 2016 it was nothing. We have actually very rare have any news about Mexico. It doesn't exist. And other way around, they have actually very few ideas. I don't know why Guatemoc invited us, but maybe he had in mind that maybe it makes sense to reactivate, this kind of relation. And we start to talk, and actually we wanted to collaborate at the Casa of Leon Trotsky in Mexico City, very important museum, but then it didn't work. But at the same time, I remember well, when one of our few dinners or talks, and he asked, what do you like to do? And I say, we would like to do something with Zapatism. He said, you crazy, who is interested in these old stories? They're not existing anymore. Even in Mexico, it makes no sense. It's completely kind of out of radars, no one interested in it. It was high days, beginning of 2001, when Zapatista marching from Chiapas to Mexico City, and Marcos was actually one of the most kind of pop figure, The face was printed on most magazines worldwide after revolution, and then was publishing his books, so yeah. But 2016, it was really after 8 years or more of silence of Zapatista, big problems between Zapatista and Mexican left. So when the left decided that Zapatista completely abandoned their fight against conservative, then silence. It was really quite very problematic the decision. But of course, that relation between artist and institution, when artists say, yes, we do that, usually institutions say, okay, it's your failure, you can really. And of course, it was also very complicated. They didn't have money, we didn't have money, so it was really very hard to raise production. But finally, already in 2017, the topic became more hot because Zapatista returned into Mexican politics because they support Marichuy for presidential election as a candidate of CNT. Indigenous, not CNT, Congress Indígena, Congress of Indigenous Nations, so Mexican Congress, which was actually very much affiliated with Zapatista movement in Mexico, but at the same time, it was also, so I mean, the support of Zapatista when they really all of a sudden decided to participate in electoral politics, which they always negate completely, because Zapatista autonomy, that was actually, I was about to speak at the end, it's not actually that kind of our imagination of openness, so everyone welcome, please come. So it's super close community with their own kind of security. Even people who go there to become volunteers can wait 4 months without any contact. So they really have to protect themselves and have completely another type of relation to outer world. So I don't know, Nico, if I really made this kind of point of departure, but at the same time for us it was really important because it was the last moment of when we get that kind of political inspirational impulse, so to say. And this impulse was actually still with us. That's why for us we would like always to keep that potentiality or use with some forgotten phenomena, which actually very much, I would say, characteristic of our collective. We always take something which completely neglected, abandoned, forgotten, and then try to reveal its kind of meaning and actuality for us and then share it with people. So that's all, I guess I should stop here.
It's enough.
It was the beginning.
Maybe you will continue.
Okay.
Very well articulate these
Thank
these
you so much.
relations
Thank
Yeah.
you.
with Zapatismo, how you explain very well how you position yourself as a collective in a position of learning with or unlearning, and how the exercise that you came back with this necessity, this need to also share what you had learned by visiting the caracols with the new generation. In the text, you evoke the fact that when you first, in the 90s, received the translation of Oleg, that guide you also in to have the dialogue with the Zapatista when you visit them. And actually in the book there is a wonderful conversation you have with Subcomandante Moises that we have also insert, but you explain very well how coming back after this experience you felt the need to share with the new generation of younger activists or younger artists who probably were not exposed to Zapatismo, which led to the first film of this Zapatista trilogy, the Dead End number 17, another residency when you and the participant of your school shared the life and study sessions in the dacha outside of St. Petersburg, and where people started to really question what is Zapatismo in Putin, Russia, how they can engage with the questions that they evoke, that they have gone through, how to be non-patriarchal, how to be anti-capitalist, how to build a path of autonomy in our own context. And this is very well shared in your text, and especially in your beautiful film, which, yes, Nikolay is sharing. The cover of our book is taken exactly from that work. And also somehow, should we see fragment of this film? How do you feel?
Yeah. Would be great to show maybe fragments. Number.
Maybe I can tell something about our
I think it would be interesting.
Maybe you can give me some. Yeah, maybe I can tell something about our film, and then. Okay, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, here well. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
But would be nice that they
We hear you, Tsaplya, still
Yeah.
a little bit with the same problem of the microphone.
Dears, what do you think?
Partition, very просто,
Maybe I can tell something and then we will show our film or not.
Yeah, no, not to show. It's a fragment of the film.
Just a fragment.
It's not a fragment.
But maybe I can explain you something.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, please.
Yeah, because when I was preparing for my speech today, I decided to start from the very beginning, because I wanted to tell you that we are the group who is doing political art, by the way. Maybe you don't. Yeah, and what does it mean to do political art? It means that we believe that art can change the world. I mean, it means a lot of things, but the most important is that we believe. And I know that now it sounds a little bit naive. I know.
Naive.
Yeah, I know. But I still believe. And we started in 2003 as activists. Then we started to do our newspaper, and it was kind of education, self-education, first of all. Political education. Then we started to do our Songspiels, and it was, big political, musical videos when we wanted to analyze the real situation and show how the machine of power is working. Then we created our school, and now we can see the new generation of political engaged young artists and not artists, intellectuals. And it was our way to do, But one day, we realized that it doesn't work anymore. That if we really want to do political art, or if we really want to change the world, we need to create the new method. We need to create the new way to do it. And we started to look around. We started to look for new inspiration. And Dima told you that we, from the very beginning, when it was published, this book by Subcommandant Marcos in Russian, we were really inspired by them, by that book and Subcommandant and Zapatistas. But it was in 2000. It was ages ago. But in time when I started to look for inspiration, that book came to us, not by chance. Of course, by chance, because Dima told you the story, but I guess by miracle. Yeah, because we decided that we can take this book and reread it together with our students. No, we don't like to call them students. Usually we call them participants of our school. And can you imagine? We spent 6 months just read. It's not like it's not the big book. It's just a little one. But it was like we read, and we decided if our students found something interesting and important for them, we will continue with Zapatismo. If not, we forgot it. And 6 months we were reading. And then just step by step, some important things started to appear on the surface. And from the beginning it was like fairy tales, political, beautiful, blah, 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 fairy tales. But in the end, it became something, And then we rented summer house. We call it dacha in a Russian village with the name Siverskaya. And we spent 2 weeks together with our students, with our cameraman, with our choreographer, Nina Borisovna Gasteva, with Nikolay. I hope he's there.
He's there.
Yeah, with our cat, with our daughter, all together. And we didn't kill each other, and I guess it is already achievement. And we started to practice, not of course Zapatismo, of course not, it is not possible, but we started to practice what we found when we were reading the book by Subcommandant Marcos. So we created our own version of Zapatismo. And we guess that we are right. Because Zapatista says, please, guys, don't copy us. You have to stay at home. Don't go to chapters. Don't try to help us. Stay at home and try to change situation around you. And we started to do it. You know, exactly in our village, in our dacha, you know, that was the point when we started to change something around us. And I should say that in the end, we very changed. We, Dima, me, Nikolay, our cat, our students, everybody, you know, we really changed. And what else? And now maybe we can show you some of our practice.
Please show number 1 fragment.
Yeah?
No, number 1. It's 0. Yes, this one.
Ah, yeah. Maybe explanation and okay, after.
Yeah, it's just
Оса и лось в царстве коммунизма.
sound. There is no sound. Yes.
Оса и лось решили в коммунизм войти. Оса влетела в коммунизм, а лось никак не может. «Давай же, лось!» — кричит оса. «Входи ко мне! Тут коммунизм, тут хорошо! Давай же, лось!» А лось рога свои хранит и сбросить их не может.
Свои рога не сброшу я, ведь то моя идеология.
Оставь, оставь ты, лось, свою и мудрость, и силу. Стань новым ты лосем и последуй ко мне в коммунизм.
Но как же я сброшу свою мудрость и силу? Что же у меня останется?
То ложное твое сознание, лось, влети ко мне ты в коммунизм.
Да, ну ладно. О, получилось! Ура!
Мы в коммунизме, лось.
It's not finished.
Ну, вообще странное ощущение, что такая вроде крапива, а вроде как бы техника. Что-то такое, как бы, не знаю, как будто инопланетное, что ли, там. Улитка, кстати. Под листиком. 2. Вот, тут много улиток на крапиве сидит. Я когда бежала сегодня, вдохнула, и у меня залетела в рот муха. И я такая подумала, что ну и муха мне в рот залетела, а потом, ну как бы, ну а что? Ну вот так вот мы встретились сейчас, как бы я открыла рот, и она в него залетела. Это так случилось.
Да. Okay. And I guess we will tell about this movie. It's not movie, of course. Just I don't know how to call it. No, we call it film, but in fact it is not. We will do kind of presentation day after tomorrow.
Yes.
Day after tomorrow. Yeah, and. Yeah, I don't want to stop here. Yeah.
No.
Okay, and So, and then during the 2 weeks, when we practice this puppet seat, I want to tell you something. Puppet seat, some collective practice, body practice, and a lot of things. We started to create kind of method. We started to think, started to give the name for very, very strange things. Can you give me the book?
Ask Nikolay. He can.
Huh?
Nikolay can.
Yeah. Can you можешь найти мой текст?
Your text?
Да.
I can try.
And it was the beginning of what we call our new method, Zapatistas method. And for me, it's very important that this method started to create, not like we, Dmitry, Nikolay,
99.
Dmitry, Nikolay, Glukle, say, sit around, started to think. No, it was created in the process. We, together with our young comrades, we just started to practice, and then it was created, you know. And then we continue, of course, in Italy, and of course it is not finished. But when I was reading this text, and there are some points in this text which are not clear at all. No, for example, some of them are clear. One of the most important points in our method is to create equality. А?
Мы все это воскресенье будем рассказывать.
Воскресенье? Да. Sunday? No, it's about method. Equality, for example. You know, it sounds very simple. What does it mean, equality? But of course, in our school, we can try to create equality because our students, and we from one field, they are young artists and young intelligence, and we can try to do it. But how to create equality with people from Africa, because they are migrants, you know, and I am, for example, white woman, and I have my own privilege, and how I can manage, how I can consider my privilege. And even with our students, you know, they are young, and they have their own privilege, especially nowadays in COVID. But I have my own, yeah, and that's very, 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 very strange things. But Zapatistas, for example, they always practice equality. All of them are equal, and if they find something which is not equal, they stop there and try to kill it, to understand why it is not equal, why we see something. And the process is more important than the result. It is kind of commonplace nowadays, yeah? All of us think that that process is more important, but how to practice it? All of us has deadlines, and sometimes we really have to be really like, but it is not. But Zapatista says that every day is important. We live our life every day. You know, every day. It's
Jesus Christ.
Sure?
Jesus Christ also said.
You are right. Anticlimax. We call it anticlimax. Anticulmination. It's a position just opposite culmination, because we always think that our life, if you are an artist, for example, culmination can be Venice biennial. Our life is not important. But it is not true, of course. We are living our life. And what thing is weakness is stronger than power. And it is very often in Subcommandant Marcus fairy tales, that weakness is fighting the power. And for me, it's how it could be, you know. I feel by my heart, my artistic intuition tells me that it is possible, but how it is possible? And when we were in Chiapas, I always asked people, guys, please tell me how it is possible. What does it mean? That weakness is stronger than power. And only one answer in the church, and he told me, you see, we are so weak. In compare with all of this Mexican state, but we are still alive. We are still fighting. We are here, and of course it reminds me how plants are living. Plants are very weak, the most fragile thing on the earth. Everybody can eat it, you know. Every calf can come and eat the grass, but the grass is always. It is immortal, you know. It is always...
Recreate.
How?
Recreate.
Right, thank you. And no,
Don't make a spoiler. It's for our lecture.
it is from our lecture, but it's from our point. So
Don't spoil it.
yeah. So let's continue.
Please come on Sunday. It will be much more.
Away from the pod. Unfortunately, we could not hear a single word of what you were saying, besides that art can change the world. We agree with that statement, as the Zapatistas proved, but the sound is very disturbed. The microphone was really creating a crazy soundscape for us. So we a researcher from Mexico that has spent a lot of time studying relationship between visual culture, utopia, and social movement, Cristina Ihar, who also brings a lot of insights that enable us also to art is a tool to change society, to reflect on it, and also to disseminate a political message. Art is a pedagogical tool, a lot how it is exactly through the murals, through the poetry, through the literature, that the message of Zapatista, they use metaphors, the way they use language, and the way in which their narrative is built. And I think we kind of saw Tsaplya specifically, almost for us in the West, this connection with the past and this connection.
Real, in fact, it is very important to navigate back of lament for the future is one of the navigating symbols in this case.
Yes, where you cannot look at history as it is, and you have to reverse your sight and look otherwise in order to imagine a future. And in a way, maybe Nikolay, since you were interjecting, please, you continue. Sorry. You can say a little bit, because as a designer of the book, Nikolay also decided that the book would proceed backwards.
So basically, yes, thank you, Alessandra, thank you, colleagues, thank you, dear family. This book basically starts from the page
-8.
Yeah, basically it's -8 that pre-suggests the page number 1, and it's here. You can read the book backwards. You can navigate through it, starting from the intro that is in the very last pages of the physical volume. Then you have the introduction. After the introduction, you have the navigation chart, which is the contents, which are basically always in the beginning of the book. So everything is the backward reading. And in the end, you have one of the very dear and important part for us, since the School of Engaged Art, before we started navigating through Zapatismo, we had a very important long-term and dedicated, dense period of learning Zapatista Spanish, which is a contradictory term. We started to learn Spanish with the Zapatista terms, and here it ends up with the Palabratorio Zapatista, where we collected the most relevant and most clicking, echoing, and resonating terms of the Zapatista language, how it flips back and resonates to our own practices. So we have little glossario of Zapatistas included in our book, carefully selected.
Yeah, I think this is maybe also interesting to say that for those who are not so, who don't know so much about the Zapatista movement and their history, we decided to also add a little didactic session, so the glossary of the notions, the words, the palabras that for them are the words that have a particular amplitude and that reflect their political trajectory, also going from Z to A, from Zapatista to Autonomy and Acteal, that marks the massacre of a community close to the Zapatista. We also have a timeline from of their project of resistance, which we, as they taught us, start exactly with the invasion of what we call Latin America, of Abya Yala from the Spanish conquistadores, and mark all the most important moment of Zapatismo insurgency movement, from the 10 years that they were clandestine organizing to, of course, January 1st, when at the same time that the NAFTA agreement was signed between Canada, the US, and Mexico, they insurged until the very announcement of the traveling of the Gira for life, the journey for life that they started in April 2021. So there is this timeline that helps also orient ourselves in their experience, and there are other words of Zapatista themselves, as it was mentioned in the beautiful text that the now called Subcomandante Galeano, formerly known as Marcos, brought to announce the invasion of the Zapatista into the European continent. We also have a text that the Zapatista women use to salute the delegation of women that went to visit them. For twice they organized an international encounter of women in struggle, and it's a beautiful salutation that they brought in the moment in which they separate and they close with the ceremony, the second encounter. We, of course, have the words of Subcomandante Moises in the interview that he was able to have with Chto Delat. We have the Zapatista art. We have that Nikolay showed before, which was also part of the show in Mexico. And we have a fable of Subcomandante Marcos, Don Dulito, a very important fable for us, in which he explained the miracle. And the miracle also appears in Tsaplya text as one of the tools we can use in this praxis of trying to reimagine the world or revolutionize our world. What do you think, guys? Should we show another fragment of the other film with the miracle maybe of the firefly that came to, the dragonfly that came to visit our land in our Italian film?
Да, конечно.
Second number 2.
Yeah, from Italian. The first one. Alessandra will be good. The second one. Second. And yes, the third one.
Алят, пропрыгай.
Lavorarlo per fare la farina dobbiamo fare questo processo che viene detto sbramatura per recuperare il chicco nudo. L'embrione del germe è in questa posizione. Questo poi sono le riserve amido e proteine del grano di tutti.
I think it's... You stop sharing the film?
Yeah, you're back.
Oh, I'm back. Okay, thank you. So yes, this was the film shot in Puglia, in the south of Italy, and that Free Home University hosted and produced. And in the book, we can find two chapters dedicated to this work. One was written by Cristian Peverieri, who is an Italian activist that was part of the caravan organized by Italian activists to Chiapas. He was part of the march of the people of the color of the soil, which was the march that from Chiapas arrived to Mexico cities. And he explains very well, both in a way, the context of our work in the south of Italy, the work of Casa delle Agricolture, that he defines somehow the Zapatista of Salento, the Zapatista of Italy, for their commitment to common life, to the defense of life, to a different relation with nature, and to sustain, to agriculture as a way also to sustain life against the exploitation of the soil and of human labor. And in the same way, he brings up how Zapatismo was influential for the Italian movement, and especially we are talking about the years of 20 years ago after Seattle, in the moment of alter modernity, or the so-called no global, which is also a text that, which is also a moment that is reflected in the text of Marco Baravalle, who put in relation Zapatismo and Operaismo, and the work of Antonio Negri and Michael Hart, and also how Zapatismo is still relevant for the new wave of so-called indigenous resurgency. And how influential it is for the environmentalist movement that are active in our time. To go back to our Italian film, your Italian film, our shared experience here where I'm speaking from, there is one of the texts that I really love in our book is from two other artists and filmmakers, Sylvia Malioni and Graham Thompson, who bring in a dialogue, in a form of conversation or commentary of your film, a deep analysis of the filmic language that you use, and the way the camera moves, the way the film is made of this double layer, double level. In one part is the process, Chto Delat pedagogical process, but also the process of a community that is forming, a community that is becoming through this experience of cohabitation, of sharing convivial time, or cooking together, dancing, walking together, etc. And on another time, how the stories emerge. And these are the stories, both fictional, the stories of these creatures that are made with the dough, with these people of flour, salt, and water, that start to build their own land, or fight to protect their own land, and then they have to negotiate to save their own land. And at the same time, almost ethnographic stories of the character, all of them, their experience as people in the migrant situation, or young activists in Russia, of activists in the south of Italy, trying to work in their community and propose model of shared forms of economy and shared forms of life. So this is the section of the book, yes, where we bring these commentaries on this film. And then there is another chapter that is mostly dedicated to the third film in your Zapatistic trilogy, which was shot in Greece in collaboration with the network of the School of Solidarity, which are 13 schools in all Greece, and support where voluntary teachers support migrants and refugees and asylum seekers to learn Greek, and also to learn how to navigate their lives in a new system, and often very inhospitable context. And this film, as Dima, I think, mentioned, was done during the lockdown. And again, the Zapatista fables from Marco's books were used as a tool to translate, both linguistically, but also, let's say, politically, our struggles, and help articulate our struggles. In that case, Chto Delat used another dispositive, which was the theater of the shadow, and the performance, and the live performance. But then the film became a way of witnessing this work and this shared learning experience. The film, and as Nikolay is also showing, a series of collages that also were coming out of that experience, in which every character mapped their journey, both physically, geographically, their displacement, but also their somehow utopic journey through symbols of Zapatista stories and forms of belonging through their own affective objects that are also used in the performance and in the film.
And therefore, it's important to underline the presence of our comrade Ileana Fokianaki in this book, who was specifically speaking about the practices of reactivating languages. So it all make a certain connection, because Ileana hosted as a curator the show in which Chto Delat participated with the film and theatrical practices connected to the School of Solidarity.
Should we show a fragment of that film too?
We'll be showing it on Sunday, like a premiere together with Ileana. Maybe we'll skip it, yeah. What do you think, Olga? Or to show fragment? We open it, just...
But it's a good way also to invite people for the whole thing, for the Sunday, so if
Okay, let's do that. Let's make, teaser, like a teaser. Number 3, please.
Μιλούν για την ανάγκη να διδαχτούμε τις διαφορετικές γεωγραφίες και τις διαφορετικές ιστορίες των λαών. Δεν είναι μία γεωγραφία, αυτή που η Δύση παρουσιάζει με κέντρο τον εαυτό της, είναι πολλές, ανάλογα που βρισκόμαστε. Δεν είναι μία ιστορία, αυτή που η Δύση παρουσιάζει ως παγκόσμια ιστορία, ένα άθροισμα από ιστορίες. Επομένως, ήταν και για μας ένα μεγάλο μάθημα. Μας έδειξε ότι ο κόσμος δεν έχει κέντρο την Ευρώπη που ξέρουμε, έχει πολλά κέντρα, πολλούς τρόπους να βλέπει κανείς τη ζωή και να της δίνει νόημα. Αυτή λοιπόν η εμπειρία από την σχέση μας με τους συντρόφους Ζαπατίστας ήταν μια εμπειρία προσωπικά, αλλά αν έχω την εντύπωση, επειδή μίλησα με πολλούς άλλους που πήγαν και βοήθησαν, θα σας δείξω σε ποιο έργο, από αυτές που σου αλλάζουν κάπως τα μέτρα που παίρνεις για τη...
Όλη με τη ζωή ψάχνω κλειδιά. Στις τσέπες, στις καναπέδες, στα άπλυτα και στα σιρτάρια. Μα τι στο καλό με πέτυχε στην πόρτα. Έχω ραντεβού σε 5 λεπτά. Στην άκρη της πόλης. Πώς θα προλαβαίνω. Αυτό το πρόβλημα το συνειδητοποίησα μετά από 10 χρόνια. Κατάλαβα ότι είναι τα κλειδιά. Είναι πολύ σημαντικά να ξέρεις που είναι για να βγεις, για να πας στο ραντεβού σου. Να ξαναγυρνάς και να ξέρεις που είναι, που βρίσκονται. Αυτό μπορεί να μην έχω πολύ σημαντικό αυτό το αντικείμενο. Ίσως δεν μου έβγαζε κάτι, ξέρω, στη ζωή μου. Ή δεν με νοιάζει, ξέρω, αυτό το σπίτι. Ή κάτι άλλο. Αλλά το κατάλαβα μετά από χρόνια ότι είναι πολύ σημαντικό. Αυτό.
Για να διηγηθούμε την ιστορία της εξουσίας.
Τα γάλματα και τα πουλιά. Για να διηγηθούμε την ιστορία της εξουσίας. Την εξουσία δεν την ενδιαφέρει η συνένεση, η συμφωνία, ο λόγος που γεννιέται στο καθένα. Η συμφωνία, ο λόγος που γεννιέται στο καθένα. Την ενδιαφέρει η κυριαρχία.
Ο έξυπνος
Ο έξυπνος κόσμος την εξουσία προσποιείται πως είναι υπερέπλοκος, αλλά είναι αρκετά απλός. Αποτελείται από δόγματα και αγάλματα. Εξέργηση. Είναι μόλις ένα από τα χιλιάδες πολλιά κοπητών.
Είναι μόλις
εξέγερση, όπως κάθε πολύ γεννιέται.
Η εξέγερση, όπως κάθε πουλί, γεννιέται,
μεγαλώνει, τραγουδάει. Αναπαράγεται με το άλλο και μέσα στο άλλο. Παθαίνει και, όπως πρέπει να κάνουν τα πουλιά, χέζει τα γάλματα.
Thank you. Now you add a little bit of teaser into the many tools that Chto Delat are able to deploy when they work with different communities. And yes, as you were mentioned before, Iliana's text is really key to understand this question of language also across different epistemologies and different ways of learning, and also the emancipatory capacity, like emancipatory education spaces, emancipatory pedagogies that she especially bring her witnessing. How do we learn together? How when people coming from different paths of life can learn together when they start doing and moving together, and if art is able to mobilize this type of energy and capacities, then art becomes a way of coming. It becomes a way of overcoming the borders and the enclosures that separate us, both physically, politically, and also somehow for the structure that we have internalized, the cultural structure of separation that we have internalized. And I think maybe it's the time to share, to see if the people that are there with you have questions. The book is very rich, as you are probably maybe seeing if you are looking at it. Both, I want to say that the visual part of the book are as rich as the textual part. I think Nikolay did a fantastic work in really intertwining and juxtaposing both the visual, artistic material together with this textual articulation that the friends that share their thought offer us to. And yes, maybe that the last important text I want to mention is probably the one in which this question of pedagogy and insurgent learning, what does it mean also for us to build space of learning, autonomous space of learning, is probably the text of Manolo Callaghan, who has been also someone since the very beginning in touch with Zapatista communities, translating the first communiques of the group, and who has written a text that is called Civic Pedagogy of Zapatismo, is working on this notion, observing how Zapatismo is a movement inherently focused around the question of learning a different way of doing politics, in which the self-reflection, the constant critical, the slowness in which new forms of governance are put in practice and elaborate and reflected on is very key of their movement, and is key also of the success of their movement, because should not be forgotten that these are people under constant attack from the paramilitary, from the state, from the national army, and from those that the multinational that have so much interest in those lands that they try to defend, organize attack against them constantly, as we saw even when they first arrived in Spain. Immediately some few people were kidnapped as a response of the state of this global attention that they were having coming to visit us in Europe, and somehow the text really explain very well the different tool, the convivial tool, and how pedagogy is important for this movement, because it's one of the tools in which, through this constant learning, they learn how to resist and how to manage and govern their own communities autonomously, both exactly with a very simple yet complex system of governance, as well creating independent clinic to take care of the health of the people, independent forms of justice, and of course the escuelitas, the schools where they really reverse the colonial setting, the colonial language, the Western paradigm that has colonized, and they try to instead propose their own reading of history through their own indigenous way of knowing and being. And especially around the notion of the Fourth World War, which is what they are telling us. We are living in a Fourth World War, and I think with the ecological crisis and the violence that is exploding everywhere to exploit and extract the little resource that our planet is still able to maintain, this is very visible, and this is probably one of the reasons why they are on this mission of coming to see us and to share tools in which we can try to push back and to find the strength to revoke this way of these forms, the different forms of exploitation, both of land and people.
Yes.
Nikolay, do you want to add something?
Yes, actually, we wanted to open up a little bit of time for questions and answers. It's 11 minutes before we are done. And I wanted to announce to very kindly contribute to the Zapatista pedagogical projects that will be supported also by selling the book. We are gaining contributions in order to donate to the pedagogical projects of Zapatista communities. So please, our friends, forgive us if we cannot really deliver any free copies at this point, and your generosity will be appreciated. Thank you so much. Buy the book.
Thank you, Nikolay. I think you can hear me on my, if you
Yes.
turn up my, yeah, you can hear me. Okay, good. Oh, wow, fancy. Now we're both on the screen. Thank you, Nikolay, for mentioning that very important book, the note about the book, that some donation goes to the Zapatista movement. I think it's actually time that we're going to move and welcome the people in the space for a drink and have a bit of discussion here. But I want to thank you and Alessandra for carrying us through this very beautiful book. I think we're all very excited to read a bit further and explore ourselves. And I was also very glad we could show a little clip of about the footprints, what we hide in our pockets, and other shadows of hope that we will screen on Sunday And there we will also get the chance to be with Dmitry and Olga again and learn a bit more about your process. And Ileana, yes, you're completely correct. So Ileana will join us also on Sunday, who is a contributor of the book and co-producer from State of Concept Athens of the film, and will also be guided by Katya Krupinovica, who was a curator of Framer Frame's 2017 show, It Won't Be Long Now, Comrades, which featured Gluklia and Nikolay as well. So we're really looking forward to that, and thank you again to Nikolay and Alessandra for joining us and your lovely talk tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. Really glad.
Thank you.
Yes, have a good evening.
You too.
We will.
Enjoy.
You. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so yes, everyone is welcome now for a drink.